Bitch, I don't play. I'm petty and I'm known to throw shade.
Welcome to GayTalk 2.0, the ultimate podcast for your dose of dish.
Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to another episode of GayTalk 2.0, an LGBT podcast streaming live on gaytalk20.com/live stream. We do so every Wednesday at 6 p.m. ish. Yeah, we had some difficulties today getting off, and so we're trying some new things. Getting off, yes. And but nonetheless, we are here. So I want to thank you all for joining us on today's episode. And yeah, welcome. It's fucking February, so my name is Tom. I'm your host, and as always, I'm here in the studio with my amazing co-host, starting with the first one.
Hey, y'all, Nick or Trish.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
And
J Bear, aka your boyfriend's boyfriend.
all right, now she gonna get whipped one day.
Get whooped one day.
That boyfriend's boyfriend, or the boyfriend's girlfriend, or the boyfriend's boyfriend is gonna come after you and like chop it up.
We'll figure it out then.
At one point or another. But we're here. It is February 1st. I have to say that we have been very fortunate this entire time when it comes to weather. No snow.
It's so
nothing.
crazy.
It's been very weird, but it's about to get brick cold. We're expecting to be like -3 on Saturday evening or something like that.
Yeah.
So our balls are going to be pretty
Extra
cold. And you just shaved yours.
I know.
Yeah.
Just for this show.
So nonetheless, we're trying to make the best of it. And, with February comes the promise of spring, not long from now, we're going to start seeing, rolling into March, and then the St. Patrick's Day parade, which is something that, we always, want to like look forward to, and the promise of spring and warmer weather and longer days, right? That's always good. So, yeah, I'm excited. Spring is around the corner. So, and did I mention I was walking the backyard. I let my dogs out. Who let the dogs out? Me. And my fucking daylilies are coming up.
Yeah, no, one of my friends posted something on Facebook about that.
I was like, what?
It's February.
Yeah.
Not time yet.
Yeah, it's like, go back to bed. It's like, you shouldn't be up.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's that. But anyway, how are my bitches doing? J Bear, let's start with you. How are you, darling?
Feeling better. Finally got some treatment done yesterday.
Nice. What you get?
They gave me two shots of
Did you shard your pants when they did it?
I almost did.
Oh,
I thought I was actually, because I've had cortisone shots in my hands. Oh boy.
That's why I said no.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm coming in there too.
So I've had them done on my fingers before, and the initial injections do hurt. This was on my spine.
Okay.
He numbed the shit out of it because I just felt the pressure and some tension, and I felt the liquid going in, and that was about it. So,
well, you that's a common thing.
Yeah,
Usually we do feel the liquids coming in, right,
in.
Trish? What about you? Do you feel the liquids
the
going
sploosh,
Yeah,
the
just
sploosh in
after
your
the
spine. So no, but it was interesting. It was interesting because I went in kind of with anxiety,
Yeah.
because I could tolerate certain pain. I mean, I have a high tolerance, but I've had cortisone on my fingers, and the shit hurts when they initially inject it. So I was kind of expecting the same type of pain, and it wasn't even close to that.
I can imagine that it would. I mean, I can't say that I've ever gotten a cortisone shot, in my back, anywhere really for that matter.
Yeah,
So it's pretty interesting to see how things sort of kind of relax after you get it, right?
Yeah. So initially yesterday, like after all the numbing stuff wore off, I was a little had some discomfort, but it's expected. This morning I got up, I feel better. Still not 100%.
I mean, you shaved your balls, so
Yeah, which is important. Yes, queen.
So, no, but it's it helps. It helps.
Right.
I was achy last night. Why I was texting at 12 on.
Yeah, I was like, this bitch.
I forget sometimes. I just see something that's funny and I'm like, forward.
She doesn't realize that we're in bed and she's like texting at 12:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, bitch, I'm on my like 9th REM sleep before I have to get up, at 5 in the morning and do it all over again. Don't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of lose track of time sometimes when it comes to that stuff because sleep patterns all jacked up still,
Usually the case.
Yeah.
Miss Trish, how are you?
I'm fine.
Fine? Just fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything interesting happen over the weekend? Did you do anything fun? Did you watch anything fun? I don't know. I feel like you don't reserve it all to yourself. Share, bitch.
Well,
We love you.
last weekend we didn't record last week, so
Right.
last weekend I recorded another podcast.
You did. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So
Traitor.
So we had a guest on our show. How long ago? It was a couple months ago.
Who was it?
I'm gonna fuck up his name.
Just say his first name. I'll do the last name.
Bogosian.
Bogosian.
Oh, Bogosian.
Dear Bogosian.
Yeah. And he has a podcast. It's this queer book saved my life.
Right.
And so I read a lot or listen to books a lot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I'd love to join the show. And so I came here on Saturday and Tom got it all hooked up, sort of.
Yeah. Typical, intern here. Shit happens.
But we recorded a show about a play I saw when I was an intern at Actors Theater of Louisville, called Edith Can Shoot and Hit Things.
Edith Can Shoot and Hit Things.
Or Hit Them, I think.
Hit Them?
Hit Them. Yeah, and it was the first play they'd ever done. And it was fun. We recorded for about an hour and it was deep and just generally it was a good experience. It was really fun. I have done other podcasts before, but I hadn't in a while, so this was it was nice. And you sat in for a little bit of it.
I did. I kept going up and down because, I'm still shitting my pants every day. So I got to every time I feel that, I got to run, I would run upstairs. But I didn't want to really, how would I say, take from your thunder or from your vulnerability moment, right? Like, I don't want to be around you if you're talking about things that were vulnerable and things that, sort of kind of made that play a reason why having that experience saved your life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not going to really talk about it on the show. I'm going to wait until the episode comes out. Maybe we can do a special episode or something.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
I will share one of the quotes that I ended the show with.
Yes.
One of the characters in the play, so it's two gay characters, but one of the gay characters says, "You know what makes you a man? Taking it up the ass. If you could do that, you could do anything."
Pretty much. I mean, is he wrong?
No.
I agree. So, but that's awesome. And I'm glad you had that experience. And, we had been working on the logistics of that. When we had JP on the show, Derbogosian, I believe is how it's pronounced. We were talking about what had happened on season 1. Your episode will air as part of season 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they're currently doing a lot of, recordings, which I think is fantastic. But I'm glad that you were able to do that. It's a very cathartic experience when you can think back on all the things that liberate you in a sense.
Well, and what was also really special for me for that was, Ray Pamatma is the playwright for the show, and I
forgot about that. Yes.
They joined the conversation, and when I was an intern, I briefly met him, we're in the festival, like you have no time for anything. And so I was like, I don't know if you remember me. He's like, no, I don't really remember you. I'm like, that's okay. I remember the only reason I remember him is because of his show, because of his play. And so we had a moment where we, kind of connected, and then like I told my story, and I think it really was like, holy shit, well, oh my God, I can't believe my play did that for you.
Right.
And that was really powerful for me. I'm like, yeah, your play was, it made a mark on my life.
And I think that's the whole point, right? Like you go through life making connections, meeting people. You go through life doing all of these amazing things, and you don't realize how life-changing they are until you have an opportunity to sit back and reflect on them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what's really cool about this podcast is that it allows us people to reflect back on things that have made significant changes for them. But most importantly, it connects them with the people who created such art and such amazing work that allowed you to go through that moment.
Yeah.
Right. And that connection, watching someone have that experience, that life altering experience, and then meeting the person that wrote or created what did that for you is just incredible.
Yeah. No, it was fun. It was a good time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we're here. It is February 1st. It is the start of Black History Month. And it's a very somber start to Black History Month. We celebrate this every year, and every year we're seeing more and more, unfortunate events that are transpiring throughout the world. Things from, like, for example, George Floyd and all of the other, young Black men that have been, subject to being murdered at the hands of people who are supposed to protect us in a sense. And it's no different, this year we had Tyre Nichols, unfortunately, who was murdered by police officers in Tennessee last week. And it is just so eye-opening that on the very first day of Black History Month, we're starting the celebrations and starting the commemorations of the impact of the Black community in America with a funeral, right, that occurred today. Yes. A funeral which was attended by our Vice President, Kamala Harris, who got up there and just utterly just ate the stage. I mean, this woman who, for whatever reason, throughout this administration has remained very low key. I haven't seen much of her. And she's remained for whatever reason under the radar. But nonetheless, she showed up and showed out today and represented the administration in this very somber moment that, you think that wouldn't be in 2023, wouldn't be what we're actually kicking off a celebration of the history of how the African-American community and people of color have changed the landscape of America. And it's just really, really, really crazy that this is how we're kicking it off. And so I wanted to throw it on the table and sort of kind of have a little round table in regards to what your thoughts are. And
well, I read an article yesterday. I forgot what page. Anyway, but they were stating that there is a connection to the beating and the officers between Tyre and the officers. So apparently Tyre was, according to the article, and I got to double fact check, like, don't quote me on it, but what they were stating was that Tyre worked at FedEx, I believe it was.
I'm not sure.
And it was like FedEx or one of the freight companies. And one of the officers' girlfriend was also working at the same company. And there was something going on between them two at work.
I mean, one never knows, but I mean...
So they're trying to claim it's some sort of retaliation.
Wasn't this... Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that I might be behind here a little bit, but wasn't this individual killed by other...
Black officers.
Yeah.
Well,
which adds a whole nother fucking layer.
Well, that's the whole thing. So they're
wasn't
stating
only black officers. There was one Caucasian officer that was in the mix that is involved in all of that. But when you think about
but when I had a personal phone conversation on Friday of last week with I'm going to say she's a colleague of mine, but she is African American, and she actually informed me about this because I didn't really know. And her main thing was, I don't know what's going on in this world. Like, black officers killed a black person.
Right. Like, we have literally, over the course of the last 6 years, have seen black man after black man. You know, when you think about, you know, one after the other being submitted, like put in a submissive state to the point where they lose their lives. They can't breathe. They're calling. The saddest thing about all of this is the fact that he was calling for his mother at the end.
Yeah.
Mom,
yeah.
I want my mom.
Mama, yeah.
It's very, very similar to, you know, when you think about, for example, George Floyd and his call for his mama. It's like, why does this have to happen in 2023? And then it goes to it's I start immediately thinking, why do we have, first of all, you know, why do we have police officers doing traffic stops? Why do we have police officers responding to medical emergencies that have to do with, for example, mental health issues? And why are we not having trained professionals that are meant to deal with people who are having difficulties navigating their mental state? Why do we have police officers that are armed attending individuals that could potentially get a little unruly, and that could be seen as a means of them to say, well, I felt unsafe, I felt like my life was at risk, and I had to fire my weapon.
So it you know, and it's crazy because you know, as of recently, I know, you know, in Bridgeport per se that I'm familiar with, there was an officer, younger guy, who was arrested recently, well, within the past 2 years, I would say. So as an officer, he was literally abusing his girlfriend, beating her while she was pregnant.
Right.
Latino officer taking advantage, unfortunately, of his position within the force. And there were several calls made to the police department because the neighbors were concerned. Because they heard the girl screaming. This girl was like 7 or 8 months pregnant, and he was beating her.
Right.
You know, supposedly his girlfriend.
And it's sad that that's where we are.
That's the reality. And then the police officer showed up. He would show up at the door, and, you know, they know who he is, and he knows them, of course, and everything. Okay, yeah, it's fine. They wouldn't even bother going in and checking.
Wow.
So what happens? The girl finally gets out of the house and ends up going to the ER, and then they have to call police again. Right. She's all bruised, battered. That's the only way he was arrested.
Right.
So, you know, and I understand there's that camaraderie, you know, amongst officers, and you have the blue wall, as they call it, you know, where you look out for your own. But you unfortunately, there are officers that are aware of that, and they will take advantage of it, you know, and get away with it a lot of the times.
And, you know, and like you mentioned, Nick, you know, you had mentioned not literally moments ago that what's heartbreaking about this is that most of the officers that were there that resulted in this young man's death were black officers.
Yeah.
That you would think that given the temperature of the country and all the things that we've been through and the Black Lives Matter movement, that you as a black officer approaching a young black man would have the common sense to say, you know, this could end really badly. And I know this because I'm a black man, and this is a black man, and we've seen it. We've had, you know, example after example in different states of people dying at the hands of police officers. Yeah. So that you would think to yourself, what outcome do I want? Do I really want to put this man through this? Can this end differently? And why didn't it?
Well, and I think that speaks a lot to, you know, when we say defund the police, right? We're actually talking about defunding certain aspects while also funding proper trainings.
Right.
People need to know how to de-escalate situations without pulling a gun. Because once you pull the gun, game's on.
Right.
But also, if you look at, there are so many countries, not so many, but there are a decent amount of countries that police don't carry guns. And I was reading an article the other day, and I just pulled it up, but There is in the United Kingdom, which has the lowest number of reported fatal incidences between suspect criminals and the police. Most police here prefer to be seen as guardians of the people and not criminal hunters.
Correct.
And in America, I think that we see, like, even like, just like, no matter where you're driving, when you're driving, what time of day it is, if you see a cop, automatically you're,
Oh, of course.
you tense up. You tense
do.
up. You're aware of it. Like, that shouldn't be the case. They should be seen more as, guardians of the people, not coming for you.
Yeah,
just because. But there is like quotas that they have like arrest quotas they have to fill.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but it's like the same thing. Like I know in Latin American countries, like Puerto Rico, for example, people will get out and have a full-on argument with the cops.
Yeah.
Cursing, flailing, that you name it, they go at it.
Oh, those tempers, man.
And then those tempers, they fly. But I guess the difference may be, if you're in Puerto Rico, you kind of understand each other, that people are upset. Over here, if you act that way with a police officer, you're in handcuffs before you finish your sentence.
Pretty much.
Because they take it as a threat.
Right.
So that, yes, there's training to
But they
to
also
be more,
look at themselves as superior.
Yeah, superior, exactly. In other countries, they don't. They see themselves as a peer. But they also have a law to uphold. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, people get into argument with police officers and, they'll just, okay, you did this wrong. You make sure it doesn't happen again. And it's an argument done and over with.
Right. But
you know what I mean? Out here, you don't get a second chance. I remember an instance one time in New Haven. I was on the phone with a police officer and I'm driving and I get pulled over by another cop. And I'm like, listen, I'm on the cop. I don't give a fuck who you're talking to. Like, that's... And I'm like, yo, hold on. Here, this is one of your bosses. If you don't give a fuck, tell him. You know what I mean? So, but they have this superiority complex just because they have the badge. They assume they rule the land, and it's not the way it works.
Right, and it's sad that's where we go to, right? That is the de facto place where the attitude goes to immediately, not realizing that you're dealing with a human being.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when I tell you, I watched that video, and
It's rough.
It's a very rough video to watch, to see how things quickly escalated to the point of no return when it did not need to go there. And that is the saddest thing about all of this,
So the article I was talking about was on Newsweek, and then where they reported that they were being told. So Tyre Nichols was in a relationship and worked at a Memphis FedEx with Memphis police Demetrius Haley's ex-girlfriend and baby mama. After the incident took place, he took a picture of Tyre's bloodied face and sent it to the baby mama, the cop.
That is insane.
So that's why.
What news?
This was through Newsweek.
Newsweek. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So and that's why I was like, I brought it up because I know it wasn't something that you have to definitely fact check through Facebook. You know what I mean?
Right.
It wasn't fake news,
but I think
it's
that a lot is going to come to light.
Oh yeah.
There was a whole unit there. It's apparently this is this.
They were part of a specific unit that was disbanded after this incident.
Immediately after.
Yeah.
So we'll see how things end. But honestly, celebrating Black History Month, this is not how we wanted it to start. And so what I want to say is talk about some of the positive things that are happening and the things that I'm seeing. The Black community stepping up in ways that are just incredible. To bring forth awareness of where they've been, where they are, and where they're going. Our company, for example, celebrated Black History Month today by raising, the freedom flag in all of our facilities and having a ceremony. And then we're going to have events happening all throughout, the month of February in celebration of Black History Month to make sure that we are emphasizing how important it is and how impactful members of the Black and brown community have been to companies like ours. And I hope that, companies and communities really start, embracing and doing more to bring awareness to what it's like to be Black in America, because I can't tell you that I know that firsthand. And I only learned from being able to see individuals who are stepping up to the plate and speaking about the racism and the systemic racism that they face every day. And it's just, that's exactly what needs to happen,
Yeah, the only thing I will say about that is that I think while that's very important, we can't lose sight on the fact that we can't just do it because it's that month of the year. Like,
no, we need to do that.
No, I know your
You're
company.
right.
Your company has initiatives.
Right.
You have affinity groups. You work hard.
Right.
But then there are some companies out there that would throw up a flag,
Right.
To make face, when in fact we actually need to continue to actually dig in and do the work.
Right. And have that conversation month in, month out.
Right.
So it doesn't end on February 28th. Does it have 28 days this year?
Yes.
Is it 28? It's not a leap year. You're right. I agree 100%. Companies need to do more, and they need to continue to have those conversations. I think one of the best ways to do that, like you said, is having affinity groups that are specific, that hyper focus on what it's like to be, for example, a Latino in the workforce, like myself, or a gay man in the workforce, like myself, or a Black person in the workforce, and how do you advance within the structure of your company? And this is something that we all have in place. We have every single one of these groups. We have a group that's called CARE for members with disabilities in the workforce, and how do we work in making their lives more richer by being a part of our community?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring this up because so there is an initiative through the city of New Haven. It's oh God, what is it called? I know this. It's it's a pledge that a lot of artistic organizations signed. I think it's the Cultural Equity Plan. I believe that's what it's called. But they have this seminar or this like workshop that you can attend. It's called Undoing Racism.
Right.
It's really intense. It makes you really look at yourself and me specifically, what systemic racism actually is and what white fragility really means and how it affects me every day, right? But anyway, so we signed this pledge, the organization, and we're doing this workshop, and they want to do these like breakouts, right? So it's just like monthly meet and greets where you get together just to continue the conversation.
Right.
And so we had brought it to our operations team. We were like, hey, we're going to host this. We went to the seminar. We want to host this and whatnot. And they were like, well, why? And I was like, what do you mean, well, why?
Why? Because
we can't just sign a pledge and not like follow through. And they were like, oh, I didn't know we had signed that pledge. I was like, oh, here, look at this pledge. Like, you should know all about this.
That is important.
Yeah.
And I think those are the things that really need to happen. We need to really emphasize the importance of knowing what it is that we've committed ourselves to and doing the work.
Yeah, talk the talk, walk the walk.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also, I think white people specifically, and I can speak to that, when you are a part of an organization or when you're a part of a group of some kind and they have these, DEI initiatives or these offerings, no one's calling you a racist.
Right.
What they're saying is there is systemic racism.
Right.
You need to understand what white fragility means. And we're inviting you into the conversation because we don't want to push you away. Segregation never works. We want to invite you in to make you understand.
Right. Make you understand. And hopefully at the end of that the end goal is that we're all better for it. Mm-hmm. We're a better society. We're a more united society. We're able to actually live in spaces and grow in a way that you can't when you try to segregate yourselves.
You know what's funny? So I didn't know about this. I just found out about it the other day, and this has nothing to do with race, but it does have to do with segregation in a way. They are I believe they are either working on or in the process of starting an LGBTQ plus only school in New Haven.
Really?
So I think it's
There's been talks about it for some years.
right, but now they actually, I think it's like moving forward.
It's moving forward.
But like, I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. I mean, it's a good idea because, I mean, when you look at what we talk about on the show and what we talk about, like just being visible, right? Being in spaces that the hetero norm is, right? People learn from that experience. What we really need to do, in my opinion, is find a way to really infuse our school curriculum with LGBTQ history, correct sex ed, just stuff like that. Because if we segregate, then we're literally just taking everybody out of a situation, and then all of these other individuals are not going to be surrounded by the community that we are and learn from us and understand that we just are people too.
Well, there's two sides to that coin, which
it's called, the school is called the Proud Academy.
Right.
The Proud Academy, yes.
And here's the thing. So for parents who are concerned about their child being bullied, for example, in normal public schools, it gives them an opportunity to introduce their children to schools where you are exposed to like-minded individuals, where you are most likely to thrive in that environment because you are amongst people that are like you. You're right. In a sense, it sort of kind of desegregates. It segregates yourself from the community that eventually you're going to have to face. Doesn't matter how protected you feel in the school. Eventually you have to come out into the real world. And so it's a double-edged sword.
Oh, 100%. Right? But I also think, like, if I think historically, I think that there are certain people in my life that, even in high school that I interacted with, that if they hadn't interacted with me, they probably would not have been so open moving forward in life. You know what I mean?
There are some bigots that I had crushes on.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That, I was like, oh my God, I don't care. Beat me up. But God, you're still fine.
I feel
still
like,
do
probably.
work.
I feel like there is a world in which like something like this can be more of a magnet school, or like one of those, how what are those schools called where you go to school for like, the first half of the day and then you have this other program that you go to.
Right.
Like a prep school?
It's not a prep school. It's whatever. It doesn't matter.
I
feel like pulling all of these kids out and saying, hey, we're going to put all the gay kids here.
Right. I agree 100%. There is an issue. There's a double-edged sword on that, on the idea. I love the idea of being able to grow in a space in where you will thrive and you can focus more of your energy on your studies and learning rather than having to worry about who's going to beat you up when you walk out of a classroom or who's going to make fun of you when you walk into a bathroom, right? That kind of thing. But then I worry about the fact that, you're not faced with real life situations where you can learn and grow from them.
I just feel like they may be doing this, but I think that surrounding this Proud Academy, there needs to be more community conversations because thinking back, I think to myself, well, I wasn't out at this time, but I really relied on this person for support, and if they were out and they were supported by their family, so they would probably be in Proud Academy and I would be stuck by myself.
Right. But also look at it this way. For example, when you think about black colleges, right? There are colleges that specifically cater to black individuals, and what happens when you go to these individual academies or colleges is you develop a sense of pride.
That's also higher education.
Right, but who's to say that eventually won't turn into that kind of situation, and where we have our own universities that we, teach about, for example, gender, where we teach about, LGBTQ plus history in a very informative and in-depth way. I just think, there's space for it, but there's also...
I think there needs to be... there needs to be more like in-depth community conversation around it.
Right. I
think
agree.
you need to invite all of the players to the table to have that conversation.
Right. I mean, would I go to a college or an academy or a school that was strictly just LGBTQ plus if it existed? In my
they'd walk in and be like, here's PrEP, here's condoms.
which is more than we ever got.
Here's this
when we were
vaccine.
growing
Here's that
up, right?
vaccine.
Right? Which was more than we ever got when we were growing up. But if I were to be given an opportunity, I'd probably jump on it as a young person.
The LGBTQ schools have been. I mean, New York. There's been one in New York since 1985.
Right.
So which is named the Harvey Milk High School. So it's always we see that it's been in effect for some time,
right?
And it's worked to fulfill its. And again, you got to look at it. You cannot exclude anyone from school, whether they're LGBTQ or not.
Yeah.
You know, if someone chooses to attend the school, they don't have to be, you know, a
part of the community.
Community.
As long as they come correct.
Yeah, of course. But the school's veered to educate and help people in the LGBT community and their allies.
I think my biggest thing is like I fear a world in which we can't solve problems, so we just
segregate,
create silos of people continually.
Yeah,
which is a normal thing that you know people tend to want to do, right? It's create these silos.
But that's what happens at like unfunctional companies. You have silos of departments, and then the company does not thrive. It barely survives.
I 100% agree, and I understand exactly what you're saying.
But we need to go to break.
No, I'm just saying that.
I think schools like this are good in a sense because it provides that outlet, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a child who has tried multiple schools and has had issues at multiple schools, then this would be a great option for them.
I know,
in a sense where it will allow them to concentrate on their education and not worry about being harassed over how they wish to identify. And I think that's the upside to it. Do we want to segregate ourselves into groups in schools? No. But then again, you know, you have parents that are worried about the kids' education.
Right.
Oh, yeah, no, and I hear you, yeah.
And some children, even though a lot of them may not say anything at home, they might still be getting bullied or harassed in school, and they just kind of take it. And growing up, we were like, oh, yeah, that's just...
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Mm-hmm. Kids nowadays don't have the same thinking we do.
Right.
You know, you got to look at the way things have evolved over the years, and
how much access they have. To
how much more
today,
access
right?
they have to
that
info.
We didn't have.
Yeah, so that kind of helps in a sense. I don't see it sprawling all over the state.
I look at it as a safe space. It's no different than our gay bars, right?
Or the
Those
center.
are our bars or the center. These are centers specifically catering to a specific community. We welcome everyone, but if you're here, bitch, you're playing by our rules.
Yeah.
This is going to be rainbows and unicorns all the way up and down this motherfucking hallway.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm back and forth. I'm 50-50 on the whole
right.
thing. But
As am I.
It's weird because I think it's great. But it's also weird on the other side because I think, like, are we going to continue to just silo ourselves so that we feel protected?
It's a slow progress, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So,
but this is definitely a step in the right direction.
That being said, we do need to go to break. But before we do, I just want to quickly make a quick correction that was brought to my attention or to our attention of an episode that we did 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, we had talked about Scotland, not passing legislation or some sort of story like that in regards to banning conversion therapy, and how England, in a sense, was trying to pass it and Scotland wasn't. It was actually the reverse. So Hans brought it to my attention. It was actually Scotland stepping up to the plate and making things right, in England or Parliament in the UK or England sort of kind of saying, fuck you. So...
Isn't that what we were talking about, though?
Yeah, no, we said it the opposite way. We sort of kind of put Scotland threw them under the bus, but that wasn't the case. But yes, so that's pretty much it. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have more dish. We'll be right back. All right. Well, ladies and gents, welcome back. Thank you for allowing us to take that break to rinse, repeat, refresh, and do all those good things. We are back. Oh, Lord have mercy. Those shots, girl, they get into me. I'm going to start speaking cursive fairly quickly. Right, Jay?
See.
We.
Oui.
Trishy, darling.
Yeah.
Light on the shots, girl.
Why am I always being blamed?
Because it is what it is. So anyway, we are back, and we've got one more story that we're going to cover for you. This one will probably get us through a significant portion of the second half. So I want to talk about the war on healthcare against transgender Americans. There's a story right now being published on the in the Advocate, and it talks about 21 states trying to ban transgender affirming care, which is very concerning because, year after year, we've seen different states in different iterations trying to pass legislation that would ban gender affirming care for individuals in our communities. And, right now, the most concerning parts of our communities is the transgender community. They're the ones that are really, really, really going through it in regards to trying to be able to navigate healthcare, navigate the fact that, that we are actively, as Americans in many states, trying to stop the ability for them to be able to do what it is that they need to do to get the healthcare that they need. And so these states, it's just horrible. And, I'm quite shocked because, for example, Hawaii, out of all states, it's a very liberal state, considering in past elections, you think of Hawaii as a state that usually goes Democratic and all of that. But Hawaii is not immune to anti-trans legislation. Anti-transgender legislation. For example, Rep. Diamond Garcia, a Republican, has introduced House Bill 891 to ban gender-affirming procedures for minors, including not only genital surgery, but top surgery, puberty blockers, and hormone treatment. Doing so would be a felony. However, the bill, it is unlikely to pass, but nonetheless, they're making an effort to actually pass these things in states, even if the states themselves tend to be states that are voting Democratic. And I wanted to just sort of kind of open up the table and talk about this a little bit if we can.
I see that also Kansas is the same, except it's to people under the age of 21. So
But
kind of sucks because they're limiting people treatment that probably needed before that age.
Right.
But it's not a complete and total bust. You know what I mean?
But here's the thing. Oh my God, where's Chris so he can say tally it up? The problem that I have with that is the fact that at age 18, you can sign legal documents to get a bank account. You can vote. You can do so many things at the age of 18. Why do you need to be 21 to be able to legally make decisions about your health care? It doesn't make any sense to me.
At 18, you can go to the doctors on your own.
Right. So I wanted to make a quick read down of some of the states that are currently introducing legislation to ban some sort of, gender affirming care, or in any way, the ability for members of the transgender community to be able to make decisions on their health care. Hawaii being one of them. Indiana is another one. Iowa, Kansas, you mentioned, Kentucky, no surprise there. Sorry, our Kentucky friends. Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire. This shocks me, but it doesn't in a way. But New Hampshire is part of the Northeast, and typically the Northeast, you would see them as
that's another one where it's the 18 introduced by Republicans, and it's 18 for gender affirming care.
Right. New Jersey,
not as abrasive as some of the others.
Right.
Yeah.
New Jersey. We have North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon. That one is a bit hard to swallow, and I'll tell you why.
Oregon?
Oregon. Well,
The
no.
organ's hard to swallow.
No, the organs usually are, yes. Oh my God, Jay, you're so nasty. But here's why. Believe it or not, I'm actually personal friends with the plaintiffs who actually made marriage equality a thing in the state of Oregon.
That's right.
And it's kind of hard to swallow because they were actually one of the first states to actually submit a lawsuit against, the Oregon state in regards to marriage equality and in regards to LGBTQ plus rights. Paul Rummel, who I've known, him and his husband actually went against the state of Oregon and were one of the plaintiffs that actually decided that they were the deciding factor in actually allowing same-sex marriages before the U.S. Supreme Court even passed or declared that marriage equality was the law of the land.
And while I hear you, it's so different. The conversation around marriage equality and transgender rights.
You're right.
So different.
100%. But it just really shocks me that a state that has been so forward thinking, right?
Look at California. Look what happened there.
Look what happened everywhere. Really. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's basically what it comes down to. That one shocked me a little bit, but nonetheless, it happened. South Carolina, another state, South Dakota, Tennessee.
I would expect that.
Is expected. Texas, totally expected.
And the Dakota too. I mean,
yeah.
Utah. Aren't those Bible Belt states up there?
That's what you call the central states that come down all the way through the middle of the U.S., which is no surprise. Utah. When you think about, for example, all of the things that have been going on in that state, and especially because a lot of the legislation that's passed in the state of Utah is influenced largely by the Mormon faith, and but their recent change.
I mean, so was the recent bill that passed with marriage equality,
right?
Influenced by the Mormon faith.
Right. And, it's when you think about that was the newly passed legislation out of our own Congress. Mm-hmm. It was called the Respect of Marriage Act.
Correct.
Right. They actually came out in favor of it. We were shocked on the show because we've had Mama Dragons on the show. We've had Daddy Dragons or Dragon Dads.
Dragon Dads.
We call them Daddy Dragons because the ones that were on the show.
They were like, we're Dragon Dads. No, you're Daddy Dragons.
Yeah, you're Daddy Dragons. They were actually really hot. But nonetheless, you would think that I would have never thought that the Mormon church would have come out in support of.
But they came out in support of with the caveat of you cannot
force us as an institution to actually celebrate your marriage.
No, that, and they also, I think there was something in there about conversion therapy as well.
Oh no!
Like they can't regulate the church's
ability to be able to do that, which is kind of sad. Virginia, shocking. They have a Democratic governor, one of the states that the legislative house there has the most number of LGBTQ plus members of the house in that state.
But also, let's also mention that these are, they're not confirmed. They are bills that have been introduced.
Right.
Correct.
So, Wyoming, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that, in 2023, this is where we are. Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that, Trash?
I mean, honestly, the way our country is so divided and has been so we have he who shall not be named, who has created a rhetoric and a dialogue where people feel as though that they can stand up and say, we don't believe in this and it should be law.
And they can say whatever they want and expect no retribution whatsoever.
And Republicans are jumping on the bandwagon because Trump's supporters, who are mostly Republican,
Right.
believe and want to support him. I mean, there's an article that just came out today where Trump said that he would ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that there are only two genders. So he is still he's writing this, concept of transgender inequality, and he is leaning into it, and so are his supporters. And
interestingly enough, there was a comedian. I was watching Reels earlier and yesterday and the day before that, as I normally do, until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when I can't sleep, like Jay. Instead of sending messages, I pretty much I do Reels.
you scroll.
This bitch sends messages. Fuck her.
I've caught myself at 4 a.m. texting people.
Yeah,
saying
I was just like, yeah, no, don't do that. That's not nice. That's not nice. But I was watching a comedian and he literally said, he's like, I don't understand why Republicans are so against abortion. It's like, when you really think about it, and it was a little shocking to hear, but nonetheless, I got the joke. When you really think about it, those that go through with abortion, I mean, you're just basically getting rid of liberals. And I went, did he just really say that? But then I thought about it. I was like, you're right. People who have access to abortion and go through with abortion, which is their right as a woman. I just want to make sure that is clear. Typically tend to lean on the liberal side. And I was just like,
But that's not what it's about. It's, for Republicans that stand against, abortion, it's mainly because they're getting funded by organizations that don't believe in abortion.
Of course.
And if they were to stand against abortion, they would lose that funding.
100%. I agree. But the point of the joke was that, why are you against it if the majority of the people that
Yeah,
right?
No, I hear it, but I just think that that joke fell flat, and it doesn't
was
make
flat,
any sense.
tasteless. But I found it shocking and funny in a way, because I was just like, oh my god, this guy is really, and of course,
what I find funny about this whole thing
Yeah.
is that a lot of these bills that are being introduced, and a lot of the conversation that is surrounding these bills, is the fact that they would then blame the parents for child abuse, for
Right.
offering kids who are seeking gender affirming care support, when in fact it's the exact opposite. And
I agree.
I am a 100. Obviously, I'm a liberal. Like, I like to think of myself sometimes as a moderate when it comes to some other issues that aren't necessarily
typically
human.
financial. But when
Yeah.
it comes to human rights,
Human rights, yeah, I'm definitely liberal.
We know where you align.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but like, if a parent is then charged by a state for child abuse for offering their kid what they need, in fact, the state is the abuser.
Agreed, because the state is then telling the parent. So here's another argument that a lot of Republicans like to make. Why take away the opportunity for the parent to have a choice, right? A choice to not have these books, for example. When you think about all these book bannings that happen in school, to not have a say in their children's education, right? And so who are you as a state to tell this parent who wants to support their child that they don't have the right to do that because you don't agree with that?
No, I mean,
Isn't it the parent's responsibility to be able to make decisions for their child based on what they believe is right for them?
it should be.
Right? I mean, within reason, right? If you believe that your child should go to conversion therapy, we don't support that 100%.
No.
However, if you believe that your child has a right to be who they are and to embrace the fact that they know who they are, even at that young age, and that you support that, I agree 100% that we should allow the parents to make that decision, and the state should not intervene in any way, shape, or form.
But I think
because there's no harm in that.
No, but I also think that there should be more education around it too.
Agreed.
Because I mean, we've had conversations on the show, and fucking slam me if you want to, but I don't necessarily think that, you know, kids under the age of 16 should have access to hormone therapy. Beta blockers, sure. You know, let them really like develop a little bit more, because, you know, your brain doesn't stop developing for a long time. Plus, you're just hitting puberty. There's a lot going on. So blockers, sure. But I don't necessarily think that like hormones are the right action. That said, I don't think it should be regulated. That's just my belief.
Right. But you also have to think about too, for example, the times in where we live in. 30, 40 years ago, it was a completely different story. We didn't have the information that we have today.
Right. That's why I think there should be more education.
Kids growing up today have far more information available to them and can read up far more at a much younger age and gain understanding at a level that we would never have been exposed to when we were kids.
But I don't necessarily think that, while you're correct, the younger generation, because now we are getting to that like older generation, but the younger generation has access to a lot of stuff, and they will inform themselves. They will look up something they want to know. But if a parent doesn't know where to go to look, or if they don't have the right medical professional to help them make a decision, because like, say, I would never take, like, if I were to have to make a medical decision that affected my LGBTQ child, I would make sure that my, provider or my doctor was of the community or very steeped within the information of the community, so that I knew I was getting all the information I needed. What does it mean to put my child on blockers? What does it mean to give my child hormones? What's going to happen at their age of whatever age it is? Like, what is going to happen? Yes, my child can look up whatever the hell they want on the internet, but I want to know, and I want more education for adults that have to make these decisions.
And as a parent, that is your right.
So stop, putting up legislation that's just stopping it. Why don't we put up legislation that provides support and financial support for education for parents that need it?
Right. And while I agree in a sense that it is important for parents to be educated if you are responsible for making decisions on the health choices of your child, I also believe that as an individual who grows up in today's world that has far more access to information that we ever did, I think the game's not the same anymore.
I agree.
And, as a 16-year-old, if I said to myself, Grandma, because my grandmother was my legal guardian, I know, I've done the research. I've read up on, this is exactly how I'm feeling. I would want to be validated as a human, right? Whether I'm 16 or 21, I want to be validated as a human. And I want to be able to say to my grandmother, while I hear you and I see that, you've done the work and you've gone and you've consulted and this is what they're telling you, and they're telling you that I should wait. If it means the difference between me accepting who I am and not accepting who I am and taking my life.
Well, yeah,
because I'm not happy.
I hear you. And while I hear you, I think that conversation can be had and should be had when all parties have correct education and information.
I agree.
Like,
I'm not disagreeing.
I would never say to my son or daughter that, as we know, I'm never going to be a dad, but I would never say,
you never know that.
I would never say to my son or daughter, no. I would say, let's explore all these options, and then let's have another conversation.
But unfortunately, not every parent may or may not be like you, right? And some parents might be like, flat out, no, I don't believe in that. I don't think you should be that. And that's just the end of story. And then where do you go from there, right? And that is a problem that we're having. And, and that's why we see a lot of our youth, for example, have trouble and have to deal with, the stresses of wanting to find more information, follow through with information, but can't because your parents don't support you, yet they're responsible and they're legally your guardian, and you can't do anything without their say so. And what do you do?
But I also think
and how do you fight a parent that doesn't believe who you are as an individual?
I think we're saying the same thing. And Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really do. Like, I think we're on the same wavelength.
It's the same wavelength.
Yeah.
I think in general, even as adults now, seeking medical treatment, whether it's gender affirming or not, just general. For example, for me, as a bisexual individual, the doctor that I see, my general doctor, isn't really schooled in LGBT lifestyle. So my conversations when it comes to that stuff is very general because all she has is a check down list
Right.
to mark, but there's no actual conversations. And another good example, I've had a friend that was having some medical issues, and they developed a growth that caused his penis to curve, right.
Mm-hmm. Don't they call that like tardikinesia or something like that?
They develop like a lump and they develop like it's like a blood clot or something that develops and it causes the penis. So he's going to a specialist, but the specialist has no fucking clue of the LGBT community. So my friend's having an issue because he's not able to fuck,
Because those gay men, they're so vain. I'm like, your penis is not pretty. I don't want it.
And he's been after the doctors to get treatment, and they just kind of keep prolonging it, And finally, he had to sit down. He's like, "Yo, I want to fuck. I'm a gay man. Sex is a big part of my lifestyle, and anal sex is what I do. So let's figure this shit out." And it took him having to kind of teach the doctor that he needed to look at other stuff besides just the medical. There's a whole lifestyle aspect that you have to consider. And we lack that in general all around with medical services.
I agree 100%.
So when you're talking about youths that are looking at gender affirming surgeries and hormone therapy and all that, there's specific doctors that do that, but there's also so limited. But you have that one doctor that could probably give you these medications, but all your other doctors are not aligned with that. And I think that's more of a major issue than just trying to get that specific issue, resolved. Because even if as a parent you don't agree with it, but your child feels a certain way, now you have to look at medical treatment differently. Because there's gonna be things that they're gonna be experiencing that not every other kid does.
Right.
And doctors need to be aware of that. It's a lack of knowledge.
And that's why I say, like, when we look at this, all these, bills that are being introduced, it's continuing the conversation that we don't need to think about this. We don't need to worry about this. And it's continuing to make parents or people within that realm, that Republican Party or that, Trump, whatever you want to call it, think that it's wrong and it's not important. What needs to be happening, like you said, is these legislators need to be saying, all right, this is a thing. Now we need to educate ourselves. And we need to educate the people that we serve, because whether or not you're a Republican, this is an issue that can and potentially will affect either your community or your household.
Absolutely.
Right. I agree. And that being said, I think we're just gonna stick a nail in that one, leave it there, and we're gonna go ahead and move on and wrap up because we do need to close the show. So I'm gonna, as always, toss it over to my bitches. So we're going to start off with Trish. She's going to give us our Mama Kim's Minute. Do you want your love?
Yeah. Thank you. All right, everybody. Here's Mama Kim's Minute. Number 1, author perfectly explains gender recognition certificates and UK trans rights in 2 minutes. Number 2, these celebrities came out publicly after 40, it made a world of difference.
Always does.
Number 3, this father traveled hundreds of miles to see his son's first drag performance.
Yes. Over to Jay.
And on this day in gay history, brought to you by GayTalk 20 at GayTalk20.com.
Yes, queen.
The year was 2010, February 1st, where in Fiji, what was that? Jesus, that was so tiny.
Sorry, I know.
Private, adult, consensual, and non-commercial male and female homosexual acts become legal under the Crimes Decree of 2010. So basically, homosexual conduct was decriminalized in Fiji.
Say that 20 times fast.
I know.
Homosexual conduct decriminalized in Fiji. Homosexual. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought she was actually going to do it. All right. Well,
was a
thank
mouthful.
you. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
All right. Jaybird, go for it.
All righty. And if you loved...
Good
If you
try.
love the show, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting service. By subscribing, you get the latest and greatest of our show delivered right to your favorite device or web browser as soon as the episodes are published. You can also support us on Patreon. With Patreon, you, our listeners, can help to support the show with a pledge donation. The donations are collected monthly and can be of any denomination of $1 or more.
Yes, queen. Trisha. Oh, no, it's me. And now, here's Nick with our weekly reminder for all of you bottoms out there who want to keep your buttholes on point. Yes, we are talking about Future Method, and I'm going to toss it over to her and give it some love. Here she goes.
Thank you. All right, everybody, get the Future Method today. Each time you clean out with water or enemas, delicate tissues are harmed and cells are damaged, increasing chances of injury and or STDs. This first of its kind doctor-developed formula gently cleanses before you play without hurting your bum. Visit futuremethod.com to purchase your life-changing bum cleanser today.
Jaybird.
And as always, it is time to put a ring on it. And we would like to let you know that our show is available on our website, GayTalk20.com, under audio podcast. It is also available as a free download on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher Radio. Nick, over to you.
All right, you can find us on social media, Facebook, GayTalk 2.0, Instagram, GayTalk 2.0, email us at GayTalk2.0 at GayTalk20.com, Tom. Don't fuck it up like I did.
I'm going to try. So you can reach out to us, and, to reach out to us, just head on over to our... I already fucked it up. You see that? You
I broke
see
a
that?
nail, so it's just not going to end
Okay,
well.
so... If you need to reach out to us, just head on over to our website, click on the Contact Us tab located at the top of your web browser. There you can leave comments. You can, suggest topics, submit a question for the cast or an individual host. You can also call us and leave us your voicemail, your questions on voicemail. We can answer those for you on the show. Our phone number is 334-GAY-TALK. And if you need all those digits, it is 334-429-8255. Don't forget that we do stream live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can access the live stream by visiting gaytalk20.com/live stream. I want to thank you all for joining us on today's episode. Thank you, and y'all have a good night. Bye!
Thank you for listening to this episode of Gay Talk. Tune in next time for more dish.